What if, instead of Obi-Wan Kenobi stepping onto the molten surface of Mustafar, it was Master Yoda himself who confronted the fallen Anakin Skywalker? The climactic duels of Revenge of the Sith have captivated fans for decades, but have you ever wondered why the Jedi Council made the choices they did? Yoda faced Emperor Palpatine, while Obi-Wan confronted his former apprentice. But what strategic, emotional, and combat factors would change if these matchups were swapped? Let's break down exactly what would happen if the Grand Master of the Jedi Order himself went toe-to-toe with Darth Vader on the lava planet. Before we explore this alternate timeline, we need to understand the context. In the original story, the decision to send Obi-Wan to Mustafar wasn't random. The Jedi Council believed Obi-Wan's emotional connection to Anakin was both a weakness and a strength. Yoda explicitly stated that Obi-Wan couldn't face Palpatine because the Emperor was too powerful, but he could confront Anakin because of their bond. However, from a purely tactical standpoint, this decision might have been flawed. Yoda was arguably the most skilled lightsaber duelist alive, with nearly 900 years of combat experience. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan, though formidable, was known more for his defensive capabilities than his offensive prowess. The emotional argument cuts both ways too. While Obi-Wan's connection to Anakin created hesitation, Yoda's detachment might have allowed for a more decisive outcome. Let's talk about the fighting styles that would clash on Mustafar. Anakin, now Darth Vader, was a master of formed lightsaber combat, specifically Gemso. This aggressive style focuses on overwhelming opponents with powerful strikes and turning defensive moves into counterattacks. It perfectly suited his personality and incredible force sensitivity. Yoda, on the other hand, was the master of Form 4, known as Ataru. This form is all about speed, acrobatics, and force-assisted movement. We've seen Yoda's incredible agility in his duels with Count Dooku and Emperor Palpatine. His small stature becomes an advantage, as he becomes incredibly difficult to hit, spinning and leaping with supernatural grace. Here's where things get interesting. Anakin's Form 5 was specifically designed to overcome Form 4 practitioners. However, Yoda wasn't just any Ataru user. His mastery was so complete that he could adapt mid-combat, incorporating elements from other forms. Remember how he shifted from acrobatic attacks to more grounded combat when fighting Palpatine? This adaptability would be crucial against Anakin's predictable aggression. The environmental factors of Mustafar would also favor Yoda significantly. The narrow platforms, unstable ground, and flowing lava would make Anakin's powerful, sweeping attacks less effective, while Yoda's mobility would allow him to use the treacherous terrain to his advantage. Where Obi-Wan had to rely on his defensive prowess to weather Anakin's assault, Yoda could stay mobile and strike from unexpected angles. But lightsaber combat isn't just about technique, it's about the mind, and this is where Yoda's true advantage lies. Anakin's greatest weakness has always been his emotional instability. His anger, fear, and arrogance consistently led to tactical mistakes. Obi-Wan exploited this when Anakin foolishly attempted to jump over him, despite holding the low ground. Yoda would have been even more effective at exploiting these psychological weaknesses. The Grand Master's calm demeanor and wise words have a way of cutting through deception and getting to the heart of matters. Instead of the passionate pleas we heard from Obi-Wan, Yoda might have approached Anakin with the kind of pointed observations that forced self-reflection. Consider how Yoda spoke to Luke about his father. Anger, fear, aggression, the dark side are they. His ability to remain centered while pointing out the futility of the dark side's promises could have potentially reached something in Anakin that Obi-Wan's emotional appeals could not. Yoda had trained Jedi for centuries and understood the patterns of how good people fall to darkness. However, we must also consider that Anakin's rage toward the Jedi Council ran deep. He blamed them for not trusting him, for their perceived failures during the Clone Wars. Yoda, as the leader of that council, might have triggered even more fury than Obi-Wan did. So, how would the actual duel unfold? Based on their established abilities and fighting styles, the battle would likely be much shorter and more decisive than the Obi-Wan versus Anakin marathon we saw in the film. Yoda's opening moves would probably mirror his strategy against Count Dooku. He'd begin with his signature spinning attack, using the Force to launch himself at incredible speed. Anakin would counter with his aggressive Form 5 strikes, but here's the crucial difference. Yoda wouldn't engage in a prolonged blade-to-blade contest like Obi-Wan did. Instead, Yoda would use hit-and-run tactics. He'd strike quickly, then use the Force to reposition himself before Anakin could mount a proper counterattack. The lava flows and unstable platforms would become weapons in Yoda's hands. He might use the Force to redirect lava streams, or collapse sections of the facility to limit Anakin's movement options. Anakin's growing frustration would lead to increasingly reckless attacks. Without Obi-Wan's patient defensive style to enable a long, drawn-out battle, Anakin would likely overextend himself much earlier. Yoda's centuries of experience would allow him to recognize and exploit these openings with lethal precision. The climax might come when Anakin, in a fit of rage, attempts one of his characteristic leaping attacks. But where Obi-Wan had to be defensive and wait for the right moment, Yoda could be proactive. He might use the Force to alter Anakin's trajectory mid-leap, sending him directly into the lava below. Alternatively, Yoda's superior speed could allow him to simply sidestep and deliver a finishing blow before Anakin could recover. Now, let's consider what this victory would mean for the galaxy. If Yoda successfully defeats and kills Anakin on Mustafar, the ripple effects would be enormous. Most obviously, Darth Vader would never exist. The Empire's enforcer, the symbol of fear that kept star systems in line, would be gone before he truly began. Emperor Palpatine would face a crisis. His grand plan relied heavily on Vader as both an apprentice and a tool of control. Without Vader, Palpatine would need to find a new apprentice. But who could possibly replace the chosen one? The Emperor's options were limited. Count Dooku was already dead, and there were no other Force users of comparable power readily available. This scenario also assumes that Yoda survives his encounter with Anakin in better condition than he was after fighting Palpatine. A victorious Yoda, potentially with Obi-Wan having successfully confronted or at least escaped from the Emperor, could form the foundation of a much more effective rebellion. But here's a darker possibility that some fans have theorized. What if killing Anakin actually traumatized Yoda in ways that his failure against Palpatine didn't? Yoda had helped train Anakin, had sensed the fear and anger in him, but allowed his training to continue. Taking Anakin's life might have created a spiritual crisis that changed Yoda's character fundamentally. The twins, Luke and Leia, would grow up in a galaxy where their father was definitely dead, not just lost to the dark side. This could have profound implications for their development and the Force's balance in the galaxy. So, what's the final verdict? Based on combat abilities, psychological factors, and tactical advantages, Yoda would most likely defeat Anakin on Mustafar, and probably much more decisively than Obi-Wan managed. His superior lightsaber skills, Force abilities, and emotional control would prove too much for the newly minted Darth Vader to overcome. But as with all the best Star Wars stories, the victory might be Pyrrhic. The galaxy would be saved from Darth Vader, but at the cost of destroying any chance for Anakin's eventual redemption. The prequel trilogy's themes about the dangers of fear and the possibility of forgiveness would take on entirely different meanings. This scenario reminds us why the original story works so well. Sometimes the seemingly wrong choice is actually right in ways we don't immediately understand. Obi-Wan's emotional connection to Anakin, which seemed like a weakness, ultimately proved to be crucial for the galaxy's salvation decades later. What do you think? Would Yoda's victory have been worth the cost? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more Star Wars deep analysis. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next video.